Welcome back to Get to the Plot Film Club. This is episode 2, Some Like It Hot edition. Thank you all so much for all your lovely reviews, as per usual. I hope you're all doing well, actually. That's a good place to start. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good week. I am filming this on Friday, and it's really blooming hot. I'm from down south, so if you are also living down south, you probably know that it's suddenly gotten really hot for no reason. And the fun little thing about my room is my bedroom is an attic room, so the sun really does hit my room, and also I'm on the top floor of our house, so all that lovely heat rises up to the top floor, and I basically just cook. I'm filming this at like 5 p.m. as well, so like I think it's like 25 degrees now, but I only have Velux windows, so I don't get that much air. The sun is beaming down. It's very hot, and that's why I've changed the camera angle. If you're watching this on Substack, usually I would have it down that way, but I've decided to wear a dress, and I really don't want to be exposed like that on the internet. If that's okay with you guys, just let you all know as well. Podcasts on Spotify now, which I didn't even realize I managed to do because I was like just clicking buttons, and then it was kind of like, oh, just give it a minute and it will sort itself out. And then every time I checked, it wasn't on there. I had a look today, and it's blooming on there. So if you want to listen to the podcast on Spotify, you can do that. And please also, it would really help me out if you just gave it a good old lovely rating, because then I think it would like get out to people a bit more, and then more people will listen and hopefully join the club. I think there's definitely more people out there that I think would be interested in this, and I just obviously I want to push it to those people because I want it to be inclusive. I want everyone to be able to enjoy films together and talk about films together. So I'd really appreciate that if you could all do that. I'll try and get it on Apple Podcast. We'll see. Somebody did ask me about that, and I will try and do that once I get to terms with all the technical aspects. The only other thing that I was going to chat about with you guys before I started this podcast was that they released the teaser trailer for Shrek 5 the other day, and I really don't know how I feel about it. And I think it's more because I keep seeing people posting TikToks about how, oh, they did it with Puss in Boots, they changed the animation for Puss in Boots, like, why are you all, like, losing the plot here? My problem with this is that Puss in Boots is a spin off. It's its own part of the story set in the land that is Shrek. So I don't really understand why they're trying to change like the main source, if that makes sense. I don't know. Part of me feels like because whenever film franchises do spin offs kind of from the main part that it's come from, they might do a different animation style, or they might even go from live action to animation. That's like something common. I think they did that with Lord of the Rings, I think. Or like, they've How to Train Your Dragon did a TV show and the animation is slightly different because again it's a spin off. So I don't know. I think it's just I get everyone's like, stop freaking out, but also your arguments don't really have a lot of gravity to them. Like, I'm sorry, like you can do Puss in Boots differently because it works and because it is its own sort of sub story. Whereas like when you change too much of the actual original movies that started it off, it just feels a bit odd. I don't know. It's rubbing me up the wrong way at the minute. Right, I also forgot to like write down when I started this, so I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna make an educated guess. I hope I haven't rambled on for too long. But this film, I'm really glad that everyone seemed to really enjoy this film. I don't think I actually saw really any negativity with this, with the reviews that you guys put. So that was really nice. I feel like it was a good pick on my part. Just humble brag there. But it was obviously because Marilyn Monroe did turn 100 this month, and I thought it would just be really nice to celebrate her. It was annoying actually because I wanted to choose a different one to this one actually. I wanted to go with How to Marry a Millionaire, I think it was. But iPlayer was just like, yeah, you only have like 2 days to watch this. And I was like, for God's sake, we're not going to make it to the week I actually want to be able to watch these movies. So, in looking at sort of different research for this, there is a documentary on BBC iPlayer called Nobody's Perfect, the making of Some Like It Hot. And I watched it, and it's like 40 minutes. Obviously, if you're interested, go and have a watch. But I have pulled quite a lot of the information from that documentary. Oh, my voice. Excuse me. I think I am coming down with something at the minute, so I'm just doing that thing where I pretend I'm not, and then my body just thinks I'm not ill when I think I actually kind of am. So yeah, a lot of my facts will be from that. So if you do want to watch it, there might be a lot of repeats, but it is actually really interesting because Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis and even Billy Wilder, the director, they're all in the documentary. They're all talking. So it is a really nice watch. But let me tell you some fun facts about the movie. So, director and co-writer Billy Wilder adapted the story from the 1951 German comedy Fanfare of Love. Everyone always complains about remakes in this day and age, and yet they were already doing it in the 1950s. The German comedy was made in 1951, and then Some Like It Hot came out in 1959. But I think it's okay because obviously it was a German it's a German film. So I think actually they should do that more often. I think we should look into remaking more foreign films because then you do just get like a different sense of comedy with it as well. So Billy Wilder really wanted to cast Jack Lemmon as Jerry from the off, but he wasn't a big enough star for them to kind of get away with that. They originally talked to Frank Sinatra to play that part, but they said in the documentary they just kind of knew that he was not going to be reliable, like, at all. So, what I think Wilder did was arrange to meet up with him for dinner, and Sinatra just never turned up. And they were just like, this is going to be it. If we cast this man, this is all we're going to get from him throughout the filming process. So then they did already have Tony Curtis attached to the film very early on. So he was like, again, he was a name, but he wasn't enough to warrant Jack Lemmon being in the movie. And that's when Marilyn Monroe reached out to Billy Wilder, basically saying, I want to work with you again because he had just done the 7 Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe. That's the film where we get the iconic scene of her standing over the air vent, I think, when her dress is flying up. And actually, it was quite funny. I think in the documentary, they said that the moment where you see the smoke come out of the train, that's meant to kind of be reminiscent of the 7 Year Itch. I thought that was really clever. Once they had Marilyn Monroe and Tony Curtis attached to the film, then they could get away with Jack Lemmon being in it because they had their stars. He was still a notable actor at the time, but they had the names that they could drop in, like, say, the poster. It was also actually Arthur Miller, who was Marilyn Monroe's husband at the time, who has written so many plays. I'm sure you've all probably read them in English class, like The Crucible or Death of a Salesman. You'll know him, but he was actually the one that really pushed her to do this movie because just before this movie, she had a miscarriage. But then there's more to that, sadly. So the first 3 minutes of the movie, not a single word is spoken because they wanted it to be reminiscent of old silent movies, and especially because it was also black and white. Now, the reason that they went black and white with this movie is kind of funny because Marilyn Monroe, in her contract, it actually said that she was only allowed to really do coloured movies because those kind of films were becoming more popular. The argument, however, from Wilder was basically that black and white made the makeup on both the guys look so much more convincing, and I do agree with that. There are pictures that they showed in the documentary of both of the guys with their makeup on actually in colour, and I feel like it just wouldn't have looked right. That's why they decided inevitably to go with black and white. But it was also nice that they kind of honoured that as well by following the sort of silent movie trope at the start. Because it you start watching it and you think, oh, like, is this going to be that kind of vibe? But actually, it completely flips that, which is really nice. So, a little bit about Marilyn Monroe in this movie. She was enjoying it because it took her out of her home life and what she was experiencing at the time. But she was very known for being late to set and always forgetting her lines. I think they said in the documentary it was about a month into filming where she actually got pregnant again, and she became so anxious about having another miscarriage she actually developed a tic, which was her shaking her hands. I think this was something that her acting coach actually kind of encouraged her to do so that she had like a bit of an outlet for her anxiety. She would do it even in the middle of takes because she would just suddenly feel anxious, and she kind of would call cut on herself. If she wasn't ready to perform in front of the camera, she would just stop and I think just accept the fact if she didn't feel ready, then the camera wouldn't have her at her worst. And sadly, she did find out while she was filming that she did have another miscarriage, and I think that's kind of when her descent happened, and that's when she became more late to set. She was really awful apparently for forgetting her lines. They had to do so many takes for a lot of her scenes, and especially because Billy Wilder did a lot of master shots. They don't flip around a lot between different shots, but it was more because he didn't want to waste a lot of film, and yet they would spend about a week and a half filming certain things because Marilyn Monroe just couldn't get the lines right. And I don't think it was all necessarily Marilyn Monroe. I think Tony Curtis also said that he was quite bad for some of his lines in the film as well. But it was definitely a thing of if Marilyn was getting it right, you had to get it right too, because then otherwise it would just take forever to get the shot. They showed a clip of one of the scenes that Marilyn just could not get right, and it's the one where she's just come back from seeing, the yacht man, and she knocks on the door to speak to the girls, and all she has to say is "It's me, sugar," but she kept saying "Sugar, it's me," and they did say that Billy Wilder was really patient with her, which was really lovely. But I think he did say that he got to like the 83rd take and he just kind of was like, someone needs to write this and put it on the door right in front of her. But they actually did play a little snippet of her saying, "Sugar, it's me." And the thing is, I think she was just so oblivious to the fact that she was getting it wrong. I think her mental state at that time was really taking a toll on her, and also I think a toll on everyone that she was filming with, because I think people were getting quite annoyed about the fact she just couldn't get it right. Then when she enters asking about a bottle of bourbon, again they had to write her lines in the drawers that she's looking in. They also did say that it wouldn't have mattered crazy amounts if she didn't get it right because she was facing away from the camera, so they easily could have just dubbed it. But that is partly what they also did just to make sure that she was getting it right, which is just, oh, bless her. I feel so bad for that. But they all did say that in the documentary that her presence on screen and her comedic timing wouldn't have made the film what it is, and I do agree with that. She's just fantastic in the film, and I think especially everyone's reviews, they all mentioned Marilyn and just obviously how beautiful she is, which, oh my god, why did that standard of the way that she is go out of fashion? I think she honestly is one of the most beautiful women that have ever graced this earth. It's amazing how she can just stand out, especially in that group of girls who actually I think their kind of beauty standard is more similar to that of today, whereas Marilyn obviously is more the 50s standard, but yet Marilyn is the one that stands out the most. Obviously, the last line has become one of the most iconic, famous endings to a movie, and Wilder and co-writer I.A.L. Diamond actually said that it was just a placeholder. They were writing it together and they actually couldn't really think of what other way to end it. And they were intending on replacing it later during filming. And I think he said about how when they originally cast Jack Lemmon, they didn't have a script. He took the part because he was excited about the fact that they would be writing the script thinking of him. But then they only really delivered 60 pages of that script, so it wasn't finished at all. But they kind of just said, here's the template, and we're going to add to this as we go. They were just kind of doing things on the spot, like just making it up. So when they put down Nobody's Perfect at the end, it genuinely was just a placeholder, but then they could never think of a better ending. I do have thoughts about the ending. I think it does kind of go one way or the other, but I think I do like the ending, but I'm not a fan of the ending in regards to the relationship of Sugar and Joe. It did feel quite rushed. I kind of wanted it to have a bit more like, but it just because it was on the boat and then you're watching the green screen, which is awful. I'm sorry, I will say it, but I found myself more distracted by that than I was by what the actors were saying. I'm sorry. But I did like the ending between Jerry and the guy. I can't remember his name, but he was so funny. Whoever played that part, like, fantastic work. Phenomenal. The film was voted to be the #1 American screen comedy by the American Film Institute. I think this was quite a lot later after the film came out. I think it was a more recent vote. Apparently, when the film first screened, people really didn't get it and actually kind of disliked it, apart from one member in the audience who laughed at every single joke and understood every single joke. I was as sure as that person. I think people were kind of frightened about the kind of drag aspect of it, I think. But I think when people caught onto it all, it is a marvelous film. It just works so well. Like, all the jokes are timed perfectly, and the characterization of the actors on screen works marvelously well. The film was nominated for Oscars, but it only won costume design. It was nominated for Best Director, Best Actor for Jack Lemmon, and Best Screenplay, and Best Art Direction, Cinematography, and then obviously costume design. It did win more awards at the Golden Globes. It won Best Motion Picture, Best Actor for Jack Lemmon, and also Best Actress for Marilyn Monroe, which I'm glad it did win some things. But it did surprise me, actually, when they said in the documentary that it really didn't get put up for barely anything, or it didn't win barely anything. That did really surprise me. And the fact that also Tony Curtis actually only got nominated for one award and didn't even win that. And yeah, I feel like he's technically more the lead, but that's very interesting. Very interesting. Anyways, on to you guys' reviews. So Kat gave it 4 stars. I keep doing that. I keep wanting to jump to the review and I never say how many stars it was given. Kat says, there is the humour of the men dressing as women, but it doesn't feel like it's poking fun at transgender people. I know at the time that trans people weren't really out as much, and at that time it wasn't as accepted. I loved the jokes, and of course Marilyn was stunning. The story is intriguing. The only part that slightly irked me was the men that kept flirting, even after Josephine and Daphne would turn them down. And I know it's the 50s, it's a different time. I'd consider it to be timeless and just a really fun movie. I do agree with you actually on that aspect. I'm glad that they did have moments where they did kind of go, this is rubbish that women have to put up with this all the time. But I wish there was a bit more of like a, shut up, go away, please. It's funny because I wish there was a bit more of a moment where the men did kind of scar the guys that kept being like, so, can we do a bit of this? I wish there was a bit like, oh, so you into men? And they're like, no, I'm not. Because I think that would have been quite funny. But I get what you mean. They kept going, and the women kept saying no. And they just don't hear the word no. No is a full sentence. If you're going to take anything from this, take that with you. Ryan gave it 5 stars. I loved the dynamic and chemistry between Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon. I found the humour to be incredibly witty and clever. One of my favourite moments off the top of my head was the private party on the train. Of course, Marilyn Monroe gives such a charming and characteristic performance. I could listen to her talk about the most mundane things for hours and it would still be worth it. Oh, I like that. That's very lovely. I think the Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon dynamic that you talk about really reminds me of Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor in Singing in the Rain. Everyone expects you to be looking at one person, but actually it's the other one that steals the show, and it's the more underrated actor out the two. I think, yeah, Jack Lemmon just does a fantastic job. I think he does a good balance of, like, being a bloke and then also kind of enjoying this new femininity that he's found. But also, fun fact about the private party thing on the train, they actually had some of the girls from the film in that section, like the choir girls. They were in the documentary and they were saying about how when they were filming this scene, it took them up to like 6 hours to film, and they'd get out from the carriage and they wouldn't be able to walk because of the fact that they would be on their knees in this confined space, that they'd get out and be like in agony. So I do kind of feel for them, and like watching it now, you do think like that actually probably was hell on earth because of how cramped they were all together. It is such a fun scene. Magda gave it 4 stars and said it was really enjoyable and had such a warm, cozy feel to it. I agree with you completely. I love the actors, Marilyn Monroe's outfits, and the overall atmosphere of the film. The ending was great and it made me laugh several times. The humour wasn't silly or childish, it was actually quite clever and intelligent. I also liked how the movie showed the way the men were treated by other men when they were perceived as women. It was thought provoking, and I absolutely love Jerry. He's the funniest person in the world. Yes, he is. Correct, correct. And yeah, like you said, it was really nice that they did notice the fact that the men did treat the women badly. Also, another fun fact. So the scene where Jerry has the maracas, basically, Jack Lemmon walked on set and Billy Wilder was stood there with maracas and he was like shaking them. And Jack was like, "Why? What are you doing?" And he just went, "So basically, what you're going to do in this next scene is have these maracas, and every time you deliver a line, you're going to go da, 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 with the maracas." And he's like, "Okay, cool." He goes into the costume department and he just says, "Oh my god, Billy's just ruined the scene before it's even started." And he had no belief in the idea that it was going to work. But then obviously they get on set and he's doing it. He's really enjoying himself. And then apparently when it came to the screen testing, everyone loved it because they would hear the line and then laugh while he's giving his little moment and then would stop to know to listen to the next line and then would laugh again. It just gave a bit more of a rhythm to it, and then people knew that they had kind of permission to laugh, and also they wouldn't miss out on any of the jokes. Love, 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 love. I think that's so clever, but the fact that it kind of got shut down immediately did really make me chuckle. Esther says 5 stars, and she said that it's going to be one of her new top 4 favourites. Love that. I wish I had like a siren or like a button to press to be like, new top 4 favourite, but I don't, so you're just going to have to take what I just did there. So, Esther says, "At first I thought that this film would be boring because it's old and black and white, plus it was released back in 1959, but it was so, so good. The acting was impressive and the plot was actually very interesting. This movie is literally the better version of White Chicks." I did think about that. When I was watching it, I was like, this is kind of White Chicks, isn't it? But in like just an old way, I guess. I did really like that because I'm glad I wasn't the only one thinking that. I actually know what that. I haven't actually really watched White Chicks. I've seen bits of it like on TikTok, but I've never actually sat and watched it. So that is definitely one I will watch. Also now considering I've seen Some Like It Hot, but love that. Fantastic. Now I'm going to go on to Abby, and Abby was actually the person to give it the lowest score. Abby gave it 3 stars, which actually isn't even that bad. But the fact that 3 is technically the lowest, very interesting. But let's see what Abby has to say. So, it's quite funny, but it got less funny towards the end. They were a good, fun duo to watch. I wish they'd done a big reveal, though, of them actually being men rather than it just happening right at the end. Also, I found it a bit odd how Spats, I think that's how you say it, and that plot disappeared and only came back right at the end. I do kind of get what you mean. I kind of understood the fact that it did come right at the end. Didn't really understand why they all got shot. Apart from like I do understand, but that bit did feel a little bit out of the blue. And it did really frustrate me when Joe and Jerry got out from under the table just after they shot the people. Why wouldn't you wait? Wait. Because of course everyone's gonna be looking that way and they've got a gun, for God's sake. But apart from that, I do get what you mean. I do think obviously it does create quite a different vibe at the start with all this sort of New York gangster thing going on. But I think it is nicely contrasted then when like the women come into it and it's all about the choir and obviously them dressing up, and I did like that, but I do kind of get what you mean. It did feel a little bit out of place, but then I think what for me felt out of place was the fact that they all just died. So yeah, that's my point. But I do hear what you're saying and I get what you mean. Do I wish there was a big reveal? I wish there was a big reveal when it came to Joe revealing himself. It did feel very like, I'm not this or this. Will you love me? And she's like, yes. Crickets. Obviously they're kissing, but there would be crickets while they were kissing. I do think that that was one moment that did kind of get skipped out on. I just wish there was a bit more like, you know, it was there, but I just wanted it to be elongated a little bit more. But I did think that was a very good ending to what was a brilliant movie, and I definitely think I will look into more Marilyn Monroe films because I haven't actually seen that many. I think overall this was an amazing film. For me, I think I'm gonna give this 4.5 stars out of 5. It wasn't perfect, and I think it was more because of the gangster aspect of it did feel a little bit weird, and the moments didn't always feel like it kind of clicked. But apart from that, the comedy was there, the dynamic was there. It is just a cozy, lovely film, and it is a good time. And I definitely think I will rewatch it very, very soon. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And see you tomorrow for the next movie reveal. Spoilers, it's gonna be again very, very different. We're coming back to the modern day. This film came out, I think, 4 years ago. So it's very new. So I'll see you very soon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.